Once upon a time, a little girl became very sick and lost all her memories. She was empty as the day she was born. But in that dark emptiness, the voice of God spoke, "Walk, talk, heal." And by grace through faith, she did. Soon, the girl was even fuller and more alive than before her forgetting. But the voice of God continued to speak to her, and soon he commanded, "Heal others as I have healed you. Teach them the power of faith, that it may connect them to me and my power." My name is Robin Renee Wilson, and that little girl was me. For the last 35 years, through my relationship with God, I have participated in many miracles of healing, prophecy, and deliverance. None of these should be possible, but that is God's way. You can accomplish anything, heal the deepest wounds, and create doors where there were only walls, if you simply trust in faith over facts. Welcome back to Faith Over Facts. I'm your host, Robin Renee, and today we have a special guest, Dr. Laquesia Robinson. Hi, Laquesia.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here today. This is amazing. So, a fun fact for me, I just found out she was a doctor. So it's Dr. Laquesia Robinson. So I'm super excited. How did you get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I'm also dually licensed as a licensed professional clinical counselor. My doctor is because I have a PsyD, which is a doctorate of psychology. So I wear different hats, but I like to call myself a mental health advocate.
I love it. I love it. So do you have any children? Tell us a little about yourself. You have a family. What's going on with your family life?
Yes, I have a daughter. She's 6 years old, and I also do private practice. So I'm working part-time at a private practice. I also supervise staff there. So it's a small mental health therapy practice. And I also teach adjunct at California State University, Dominguez Hills. So I juggle all of that.
I love it. And you are amazing. You're always active, but you always are so positive. You have a lot on your plate, but always bring good energy. I love that about yourself. Always positive, always smiling, always happy. You make me feel good every time we're in each other's presence when I'm doing your hair.
Thank you, likewise. Right.
It's a good thing. Good vibes. So, what is have you ever experienced faith over facts in your life, and a faith over facts moment?
Definitely, and the most triggering time was when I was pregnant with Liberty. I received a diagnosis that she could have potentially had Down syndrome. And unfortunately, the doctor was misinterpreting the score, so we got a second opinion. And so within that part, of course, faith kicked in, and that's where, everything ended up turning out to be okay. Yeah. I mean, you see Liberty.
Yeah, she is amazing.
Right. And so it was just one of those things that sometimes trusting science, again, they can give you a false positive. And in that situation, that's exactly what it was. So I'm glad that, I trusted God in the process, and everything came out okay with her.
I love it. And I love her name, Liberty.
Yes.
I love it. I love that. Right. It's beautiful. Did you get that name because of all of that, or just...
what? It just came about. I like the name, and it stuck with it. We also have some challenges because her grandmother on her father's side passed 2 weeks before getting to meet her. So, it was just kind of a positive spin on a situation that was unfortunate. So,
I love her. She's so adorable.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. So, can you explain how thoughts and feelings impact the mental health well-being?
Yeah, they're very important because they're all interconnected. What we think affect the way we feel, and it also affects the way we behave, so our behaviors. So sometimes you might find that the thought is that I'm not good enough, and that thought of I'm not good enough will lead to someone feeling unworthy. And then that unworthy will kick over to behavior to where now you're socially isolating from others. Your self-esteem is took a toll. So all of it is really interconnected in the sense that what we think affects the way that what we feel, and also affects what we do. So it plays a big role in that.
So I noticed that it was a graduate stage. It went from one thing to the next. That's deep.
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
So it's always important to be mindful of those things, because sometimes we're telling ourselves negative things, and that will in turn affect our thought process and also what we do with that.
Because when you start thinking you're not worthy, and then you start doing things that, like you said, isolation and just, I'm not worthy of being around other people. I'm not worthy to go there. I'm not worthy to. That's beautiful. I love how you broke that down. That's really good. Wow. Wow. That's really good. So, in doing so, what can we do to help that? Because I love affirmations. I'm always about affirmations, speaking. I am worthy. I am enough. I am beautiful. I am, all these things. Do you think people should speak affirmations? Should they just be around, watch, encouraging? What can they do to get out of that rut?
That's a really great thing to say, because sometimes too, saying positive affirmations will increase that positivity and also, again, enhance your mood. So I always find people who are coping and kind of have positive thoughts, it means they're coping well. So usually I would say doing a little bit of that positive affirmation, but I think the biggest thing someone could do is recognizing that they do that. Sometimes I find people are so hard on themselves and they think they're pushing themselves that they don't realize that it has a negative effect on them. So I think it's just starting with knowing that, one, you are saying negative things yourself and being kind to yourself. And also too, I think along with that, just being mindful of what you're saying and what you're thinking and how that may have an impact on you. I usually catch it with journaling. So sometimes I find if I'm going back and doing some self-reflection over the day and looking at where I had low moments at or low energy, that what did I tell myself? Did I say, oh, I'm tired, this is too much? Or did I say kind of like, it's tired, I'm tired, but I'm okay,
Exactly.
And keep going.
Keep going. Exactly. I think that's so important. I felt like I had this experience this past week, and it was hard. It was actually the last 3 weeks has been really hard. At work, something that was so easy for me. And I just felt like it was a challenge after challenge after challenge. And I got to a place where I had to show myself kindness. I said, I can't do you today. Can you come back tomorrow? And that's so, I normally don't have to ever do that. But I had to take care of me, because I realized that it was a little too much for me, and it wasn't the person, it was just everything that was going on. It just didn't. I said, now, what can I do next time so this doesn't happen?
Right.
Because a lot of times people are busy, you're busy, and misunderstand things can happen. It could be misunderstood, and it's like, wow, how do we get here?
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that self-reflection and then that corrective behavior, because some people will see themselves do it, but then won't provide that corrective place to it to say, like, I need to take a step back and be kind to themselves in that way. And not really worry about what nobody else thought. Right.
I have to take care of me right now.
Exactly.
I can't take care of you until I take care of me.
Right.
And that was one of the things that they taught us in hair school. Oh. They said, they stay taught, when it gets difficult, sometimes you just have to walk away and then come back. So I did walk away. I came back and it was still there. I said, okay, I can't do this today. It's because I don't have all the tools that I need to get this done. And sometimes my faith can get me in trouble because I'm like, okay, God, you can turn water to wine. You fed the multitude with 5 loaves of bread. And 2 loaves of, with five fish and 2 loaves of bread. I'm like, Lord, you got this. And so, sometimes it's like, no, we're not doing a miracle today. Sometimes you just have to just say no, and take a break, regroup, and start again. And so that's when I'm learning God is not always doing those little small miracles. Sometimes he's like, I want you to see how are you gonna handle that, and be okay with being kind to yourself. I think a lot of times we're not kind to ourselves.
Exactly. And I think too, the biggest important piece that you said is just recognizing that, like, if you're not your best, you can be your best for other people. And again. Yeah.
And I think that's important. Just recognizing that. Thank you. I feel good. Thank you. So, in what way can negative anxiety and thinking that a person's daily life over their well-being? Like, so just how can that affect a person's daily life?
So usually if you're thinking negatively, you're usually probably having some type of negative energy, or you having sad thoughts. And that could impact people wanting to be around you. Like nobody wants to be around a Debbie Downer.
Yes.
It also impacts us because, like, again, like I said, if you're being negative and hard on yourself, you're probably withdrawing from things that usually could be uplifting, like being around other people because you don't feel good. The same with anxious thoughts. Like if you're overthinking things, or kind of just thinking that things are going to be always negative or turn out a certain way, that usually, like, that piece of kindness is not there. So you find yourself either pushing people away, or you pushing yourself away from other people,
or pushing yourself away from other people by your behavior.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times people don't want to deal with the overthinking and like doubting Thomas, because Thomas was in the Bible, so he was a doubter. He always he overthought everything. I want to better see the hoe in his hand. He just was like, let me see your hoe. Is that you really, you, Jesus? So I don't want to be that overthinker. And sometimes I find myself overthinking it because I want it to be that perfectionism.
Right.
And God has been dealing with me with that perfectionism, and that stems with that overthinking and just, and so I have really been working hard on that. Like, stop it, no overthinking. Not that everything's not gonna be perfect. And even though you want to work towards it, but know that it's not gonna be all the time, and it's okay. And I think that, growing up, because I lost my memory and I had to learn things all over again, and I experienced so many different things. And so my mother had to take me through training and coaching and this therapy and this therapist and this, to where I just put on this mask of just perfectionist. I want everything to be so perfect because of my past experience. And so trying to overcome those childhood trauma that I experienced, I used to mask it. Like everything has to look good because because I lost my memory, then I had to learn this, had to do that. So you just want everything to look good. And it's not always going to work that way. You might not always sound your best. You might not always look your best, but it's okay, just as long as you're doing your best,
Right. I like to tell people to strive towards perfection, that everything is going to be perfect because, things are in the gray. It doesn't have to be black or white, that it has to be perfect or, or everything is wrong. So it's like giving, like you said, that grace and also kind of being kind to yourself in that process.
Yeah, so everything is true. Actually, in life, just learning to be kind to yourself, learning to love yourself. And I really found in that, not always thinking negative, but always turning around for the positive,
Right.
Being optimistic, thinking optimistically, not pessimistic. But I think what happens when you turn it around for positive thinking and not negative thinking, you find yourself really like evolving. You grow, you evolve, you grow, because it's like when you feel negative, it's like you dim it, you get lower and lower. But when you start thinking positive, like, okay, I got this. I can do this. Oh, it's looking good. Then you start like, wow, and everything is increasing, and then like your energy level and everything about you is just, it's lifting up. But when you don't, then you kind of like that woe, like you said, that woe is me,
right.
And then negative thoughts, whoa, so here we go again. Life is going to happen. And I had said something this week, like I was sharing with my experience. I was like, man, if I was a new hairstylist, I don't know if I would. I probably like, I'm not doing weaves anymore, or I'm not doing, this. Maybe this is not meant for me. But I was seasoned, and that happened, and I was like, wow. But God had to show me. But that wasn't your thing. Next time, do it this way with her. And even we both kind of had a conversation on it. We were like, next time we're gonna do, because especially if you don't see a person a lot, things change. As women, our life is changing. Things is changing. And you always want to present yourself. I always want to give my person the whole me with love and compassion. And I want everyone always says, when I leave your salon, I always have a great experience. They always say I have a Trinity experience. I have this great experience.
I could attest to that. Thank you. I agree.
Thank you. So I always want people to have that experience. And I think that is my, like you said, shooting, not being perfect, but shooting for perfection. And even when it was happening, she said, Robin, this is not you. But I think I found too, that I need a day off. And when I don't have my days off,
right.
you don't say, oh, can you come in so I can look at this before? Because I had pre-planned everything, but it just went left. And I thought I did everything right, but it's when you're not rested. sometimes it can throw things off a little bit.
Agreed.
You know? So I said, I need to make sure that I take that time for even if it's a day. That's why the Bible tells us to keep your Sabbath, have that day of rest. And I thought I had a day of rest, but it really wasn't. And so when I don't have my full day, it seems like it gets a little rocky. And so I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I think enough of myself to continue to make myself a priority. And I felt like, we was off for the new year. Maybe I should just add another day for the clients, because they said, I need to see, Rob, I want to get in. But I can't be there for everyone else if I'm not there for me.
Exactly.
So I'm happy it happened. But I fixed it. I said, no, I can't come in on that day all the time. You know, because sometimes I have to take care of me so that everything is flowing, so I can say, come in for a consultation. Even though, because if I don't see you, I think a lot of times this person's I've been doing her for over 30 years. So it's kind of like, I know her. But no, her hair's changing, things changes. I need to come and see you. I need you to come in so that I can make sure you're happy. I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want to waste my time.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think in life that's important.
That's exactly what it is. Because on the other side of the table, when I'm doing therapy, that's what I see is people adjusting and kind of, again, like you said, coping, and not just trying to, because I did it last season, I could do it this season. You know, you adjust to that. And I find not everything is going to be the same. So like you said, sometimes it's taking a step back and looking and saying that, you know, this is too much for me right now. And then when I'm ready, I'll take on more. You know, it's that adjustment process.
And that's exactly it. And how can I take on more?
Right.
How would it be more
strategically?
Effective?
Right.
Yes, exactly. I love that. That's really good. Did you want to share anything else over that?
You know, as you were speaking about it, like I was saying, as a therapist, sometimes I catch people when they come in, they are coming in at their worst. And usually after I sit back and I hear their story, there's usually a process where, like, again, they're spiraling down, where they're taking in so much, or they're doing so much that they haven't made, you know, adjustments that are good for them. Just because it's like presented to you or it's on your plate, sometimes it could be timing, or sometimes it could be like really needing to say no for yourself, like you're saying. And so I always tell people too, in that process, you know, you don't want to spiral down, you want to spiral up. If it's kind of bringing more stress to you, do you need it right now? You know, and asking yourself those questions and finding ways. And when I say spiral down, I notice like people will be hard on themselves, like I need to be doing this, I have to do this. And they're putting pressure on themselves in that process. And sometimes it's unnecessary, in a sense that, like, if without that kind of sitting back and adjusting, how can I do all of this? And you're just taking it on. You're not coming in with a clear mindset or even a really strategy of how to get it done. You're just maintaining. And that will lead to burnout. So
And that is not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to retire anytime soon. I love what I love doing hair. People say, are you retired because you're doing ministry work? I love doing hair. I'm good.
Yeah. You know,
but I need to make sure that I'm taking care of me as well, and others, you know. And her hair turned out beautiful, and it was worth coming back the next day. But I also said, but next time let's do it this way, because and I realized that it's so true when we take that time, because it can spiral and it can go left, and you don't want things to. Because it's not, I can't necessarily say it was her problem or it was my fault. It happened.
Yeah.
But how can we get this never to happen again? You know, and I think in life that we just need to learn, get a strategy, and make it work.
Right.
And I think that's what God is really showing me. And it was a time where someone needed their hair done. And I mean, I would have like, oh, you come at 6 a.m. and I'll take care of you. But I had an appointment that I already had. And the old me would have said, well, you know, I'll cancel that and I'll go do you. And I said, I can't. I have to choose me. And in doing so, God had me meet this lady, and God had me minister to. It was crazy because I told her I couldn't do her, and I was able to service. I had took care of me, my needs, and in that, God had me minister to this lady, and then God had me minister to 5 people that day, and I did, I think, 9 clients.
Oh, wow.
And I said, look at that. And I got my 2 services done for me. So I said, look at my day was productive. I said, look at this. I was able to, I put God first and put myself first, right? And in return, God allowed me to do kingdom work and my job.
Right.
And it was, I wasn't even tired that day. I was like, yes, because I felt like I had won.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, and then the person who could have came, it was so crazy because the amount of money that I would have made on that service, God in return had someone else come that week, and I was able to receive that same amount.
Right. Okay.
I said, look, and it was unexpected.
Right. Uh-huh.
And I said, wow, Lord, I chose you, did everything that you wanted me to do, and I chose myself, and I still in return didn't even lose. I still, it was benefiting and was blessed with that same amount. Because a lot of times we think we put our tags, well, this, this is I need to go ahead and work, because we do, but if we don't take care of self-love,
Right.
and take care of yourself, you're not going to be good for no one else. And I think that's where depression comes in. Because if you don't feel your best, you don't look your best, then
you're not doing your best.
You're not doing your best.
Right.
But if you take care of you and you and put yourself up there, I was like, and I had got up that morning and worked out. Had my meditation. That was a great day. My meditation with the Lord. I had worked out, got different things I needed done. I said, it was a great day. And I said, this is the kind of day that I want every day, and I have those days, but then sometimes, you don't, so learning to just really make yourself that priority.
Right.
And being kind to yourself is everything. And kind thoughts, like you said, and not the negative thoughts. Because a lot of times when we do that, people learn that the individuals cope differently.
Right.
Right.
I had a similar situation with that during the pandemic, where I'm used to taking on maybe like 20 to 25 clients, but because my clients were experiencing the same thing I was doing, like shut down and all of the stuff, all of the panic that was going on with the world, I had to tell myself too, like, I can't really be there for them if I'm not there for myself, and I'm not addressing my own mental health and my spiritual needs in a sense. So, I wasn't showing up the same way because I was depressed, and sometimes hearing those stories were triggering for me. So stepping back from that and learning the same process that, I have to be kind to myself was rewarding in that sense. You want to do good and serve everyone, but you're not doing your best if you're not showing up like your best.
If you're not showing up your best. You want to be able to be the best that you can for everybody else, but if you're not showing up for yourself, how are you going to show up for somebody else?
Exactly.
That is so good. I love how you said that. And I think that's when I really learned how to regroup and learn how to pivot and change. I'm gonna do an episode on that, pivoting and changing. It's so important to learn how, like you said, you couldn't do it the same way. So what are your thoughts on that? Like pivoting and learning how to just pivot and change. Like when it's not going right, how do I just pivot?
That's my part of like saying that adjustment process. Sometimes we get stuck, and outside of our situation, we think we could handle it, and we're not handling the best. And I find, like I said, people come in at their worst place because they're really truly stuck. They're trying to do their best, but can't get unstuck. And so
I love that.
I always tell people too, like for me, like my biggest thing is like faith, like you said, spirituality, praying about it, and kind of like meditating and trying to find a word from God to say kind of what is my next move. What is your purpose for me? And there's also that part too. I have good friends, support system who I can talk to, bounce things off. They come up with strategies. At the last end of it, I'm a therapist, so I'm always going to promote therapy, that sometimes we're so blinded by what we're going through. Like I said, during the pandemic, everybody's going through depression. I know what depression looks like, but then I have to go back and look at it, what it looks like for me.
That's it. That's what I love. That's why I wanted you to go. And then that's when you pivot and you switched over. It was funny because the other day I was in meditation. Sometimes I meditate different ways, but I was like just soaking in the tub, and I was just like this meditation, this quiet time. And I began to ask God, like, Lord, how do you see me? What's next? And he said, strength. He was like, strength. I'm strengthening you. And I was like, wow, that was good. And it was funny because I felt like he was doing that in me. And then, God ended up revealing something to me that night. And I looked up the meaning, and it was talking about strength. And then the scripture was talking about strength. And I was like, okay, Lord, yes, But I think that, and sometimes to really gain strength, you have to go through.
Yeah.
And I was just sharing, like, this last 3 weeks was hard, and in areas that's normally comfortable. He kind of shakes it up a little bit.
Right.
Right? And I was like, Lord, you shaking this up, and this is like normally easy. He was like, I'm strengthening you though, because I don't want you to get too complacent, too comfortable, because I'm gonna shake it up just a little bit to get you where I have you to go, because I don't want it to be a lot of times so easy.
Right. Yeah, my pastor gave a good demonstration where he had like people subbing out thoughts. Because I also in therapy will say kind of replace a negative thought with a positive one, or replace a anxious thought with a helpful one. So if you're feeling fearful, again, placing it and finding some strength in that thought. So the demonstration he gave is like sub it out. So like not sitting with that part of being complacent, like, oh, this is sad, and just sitting with that story. What can you do to change that narrative, or finding kind of like, hope at the end of it?
And I think that's what's so good. That's what faith is all about. That's why he says, for faith is the substance of things of hope for, but the evidence of the things not seen.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, you can have that faith, but if you really want your future to be great, it's going to be some things that's not seen, but you have to have hope for it. You have to work that faith. So like, okay, no, I'm believing that change is going to come. I'm not going to stay here. I might not see the end result just yet, but I have faith that it's going to shift. It's going to change. I have hope that it's going to make a difference. It's going to change. And I think a lot of times people don't want to embrace change.
And I think that's so important about that pivot process, that you have hope in it, and you have faith, and you continue going on. Because, like I said, many people will get stuck, and they'll just stay in that negative place and never change. So without that hope, you're not able to make that pivot.
You won't make the pivot,
right?
Because all you know is like and then another thing, when you pivot, you can't look back,
right?
And I think that's the biggest problem that we have is that people look back, and that's how they stay stuck.
Right.
Because they're looking back to what used to be and not what's before them.
Exactly.
Wow, I love it. That's so good. Wow. Woo, man, this is good. So how can an individual start to recognize their healthy thoughts, patterns, my God, and break the cycle? How can they break their cycle?
Right. I think we're talking about
we did
about like that pivot process, that self-reflection. I also think, like I said, I catch it big in how I do self-reflection is sitting back on my day where I'm journaling and I'm catching some triggers that I didn't even know was there. So if I'm sitting back and I find myself like, gosh, something's really triggering me, I'm stuck, or I was really upset, I'll look at an interaction and what happened about that interaction that really triggered me. Maybe someone rubbed me the wrong way because they said something negative to me, and I'll sit with it. And you pray, you meditate on it, you move forward, but it's also to knowing kind of what got you off in the day and doing something about it, adjusting to it.
I love that. I love the trigger. Go deeper with the trigger.
So I think kind of like what I said, most people when they come in, like I'm unpacking things in their past, like you brought up trauma, that they may not know they found triggers along the way to why they do or think the way that they do. So like as I'm thinking about my own personal triggers, that situation I gave, it could have been something where somebody crossed the boundary with me, and I thought that a boundary crossed, and so I'm triggered and staying stuck with me. And so without that
it paralyzed you too. You get paralyzed.
And without that self-reflection, not knowing it, we're just walking around like just uncomfortable, upset, or whatever.
And everybody else around you is dealing with now, like, because they triggered you. Now everybody else has to deal with your whole mood and your whole, because it's something that you're battling with. I think one of the things that I love, my husband used to say, it really helped me. Everybody's not going to be like you, Robin. That saying right there. I said, that helped me. Because everybody's not going to think like you, do it the way you'll do it. Because I think a lot of times we're like, I wouldn't ever do it. He said, everybody's not going to be that way. So you can't go around broken and upset because somebody hurt your feelings.
Right.
Because everybody is not going to treat you the way. That's why it's always good to treat yourself, learn how to treat yourself with kindness. Because by practicing that, I have found with myself, the self-love journey, is that if I learn to love me, and if I'm learning to be kind to myself and show myself grace, others have to do it the same way. Because if I'm doing it for myself, you have no other choice but to do it in return for me. And if you don't, then you don't need to be in my space. Because you need to love me enough to respect my boundaries.
Right.
For myself. And I think, and when we do that, because everybody has trauma. Everybody has some things that triggers them and that can set them off. But I think the way how we learn how to handle it and how we learn how to communicate it.
Right.
That communication is so great, because a lot of times people hold it in. I was very guilty of that growing up. I didn't want, I held so much in because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings or have them take it a certain way, because my mother was one. She was very witty, and sharp. And so, and my feelings got hurt a lot because my mom was like, and she didn't mean any harm. That was just who she was. But in return, it allowed me to be more like my dad, very passive. And I would not say anything, so I would hold it in. And then when I got tired, I would just explode, and it was horrible because I held it in so long, so where I just explode. And I think that triggered, and that was the trauma that I as a kid going through that, and then it triggered it, and I just went off, and then I said things that I really didn't mean. So learning to really be true to yourself and communicate your feelings, and how you really are feeling at that time. I can't do this, or I'm uncomfortable, or I don't like when you do this, X, Y, Z. I think now that my mom's gone, I really feel like I have a freedom now. To really just like, no, I'm not taking that anymore because I did it because it was my mother, so I honored her. But no, my mom's gone. I don't have to be abused like that anymore. And even then, I kind of was telling my mom when she was living, like, Mama, no, don't talk to me like that, or because she didn't mean harm. She was just who she was, And I love her so much, but it also taught me not to be like that.
Right. You spoke to something important that I tell people, and it's a analogy I use. I said, imagine your body is like a balloon. If you keep pumping that balloon full of air, it's eventually going to burst. The same thing when we suppress our feelings, we keep it in. Eventually, we find ourselves saying something we really didn't mean. It was just in that moment we had so much on our plate that we burst.
And that's why it's better. It's so important to have healthy conversations.
Right.
Within yourself. I love how you said sometimes you have to speak to you, how we started off when we said your self-worth and knowing that we're enough, because our feelings and our thoughts would make us feel like we're not. But when we build ourselves up, I am enough. I am worthy. I am beautiful. I am kind. I am fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. When we build ourselves up, then we know, oh, hey, we're puffed, not arrogance, but we puff ourselves up with confidence, like I know who I am. And I think one of the things is so important is knowing who you are so that you can't overcome depression, knowing who you are so you can overcome those trigger moments and those and the trauma things, because I think by learning who you are and standing firm in it, it taught me how to overcome the things that I experienced growing up so that I don't pass that on to my daughters.
Right. And that's a big part of breaking those cycles. You're not just breaking it with yourself, but you're breaking it with your family, so
yeah, which is very important. And and a lot of times we don't break it because we feel like, well, we don't want to, the saying, don't talk about what goes on in your house, keep what's in your house. No, we need to release those things. Some things need to be released.
They do.
So healing can take place because some things, you might not have been abused physically, but you might have been abused verbally, or you might have been abused in so many different ways, and you don't even realize, and then you're abusing someone else because of what you experienced, And I think a lot of times, as we are to honor our parents. The Bible says, honor your mother and your father, and your days will be longer. But it also tells the parents, don't provoke your children.
Right.
And I think a lot of times the parents forget that part, provoking their children. And they provoke their children. And then it's like when the children tell them, then they're like, oh, hold on, you're not honoring me. But wait, you provoked me.
Right.
So it's like, come on now. We need to learn how to work on that. And I think that in return, it's just respecting and honoring others around, even leadership, like you said, the church, our leadership, and on our jobs, how we interact with different people. But I think that communication of our true self is so important, and and being and learning to really recognize who your thought pattern. Like, what am I thinking? Am I thinking of things that's good and pure and holy and just? What am I thinking on? What am I thinking on? Is it negative thoughts floating through my mind? Because if I have negative thoughts, then I'm going to be negative.
That's why I'm going to communicate, right? Exactly.
But if I communicate positive thoughts, I'm going to communicate positive thoughts. And then others, even if they're uncomfortable, they're like, maybe I can see it. Maybe I should see it through her eyes. And I think that, because negative situations will arise.
Right.
They will come. But how do you handle these situations? I think that if we handle it with a godly, disposition, and just like, okay, the character of God, then his character, his love, his joy, his peace, his patience,
right.
You know what I mean? His kindness, his gentleness, and his faith, and and that self-control, when it just flows through us, then we're able to really allow his presence to be known in our lives through others. So others can say, wow, she has all that. And then they start loving on you because it's gushing out of you, and kindness is gushing out of you, and the joy is gushing out of you, and peace is gushing out of you. Others be able to, wow, it's something about her. I want some of that.
Right.
And I think that's was so important. Do you have any real examples of how just depression or, trauma or anything just kind of hits you in life? Do you have anything?
Yeah, I think I'm going to circle back to that time, like I said, when, especially during the pandemic, I think most therapists had it hard because on one hand, we saw what the medical world was dealing with saving lives. I think we saw like people personal stories and how it could be heavy. I wasn't only dealing with depression and anxiety, I was also dealing with loss and people like grieving loved ones and really not knowing a lot of uncertainty with work and things like that. So when you're seeing what your clients are doing with and you're dealing with the same thing, it just makes it really hard. So for me, like I said, why saving grace has been, spirituality. And it also been just kind of like, as I said, during that process, really knowing what was on my plate and what I could handle. So I think, like, as I said, with that time where I had to kind of give myself grace was like taking a step down, saying, I can't take these number of clients.
Exactly.
I also enrolled in my personal therapy, so that way I'm making sure that, like, while my clients are telling me something about losing a loved one and I know I just lost a loved one, it's not triggering me. You still
have to be strong for them.
Right.
But at the same time, you still feeling you're having your own.
Exactly.
Oof.
I'm having my own emotional experience, but really making sure that's aside and I have a personal space in therapy to talk about it, but staying present for my clients.
Yes.
So that was a personal part where, like I said, that pivot was different, So same thing, money struggles coming up and my clients are talking about losing a job, but like you're looking at your own finances and uncertainty, but like, again, saving some space in personal therapy to like look at my own personal struggles and not just trying to help other people because I need the help too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Wow. That's really good. I think back on how even with the COVID, not COVID, with the pandemic and everything with me, because I was shut down and everything, but I had to endure the same thing, and I had to really like how it was hard because I was out of work for 6 months, but they still the bills were still rolling in. They still needed to get paid. And with God, He's so good. His grace kept me. I was talking to someone and they said, oh, so you lost your business because of the pandemic? And it felt good to say, no, actually I didn't. Right. I closed the business because that season was over. But I didn't, it didn't have to get closed because of the pandemic.
Right.
Because God's grace kept me. He kept it open, even through the pandemic. If I wanted to be there even now, we'll still be there.
Right.
But God was like, no, I want you to pivot more into ministry, kingdom stuff. So I'm like, wow. And it felt good to say, because and others was like, I guess they thought, oh, she must have closed because of the pandemic. No, but I really didn't care what they thought. It's but I was good. I was able to answer, no, that's not what happened. Actually it was because, wanted to do kingdom work. But I thought about when you shared that, how it was a lady and God was telling me He wanted me to start the Growing Through Grief group. And I think it was going to start 2 weeks later. And I was doing service in the lady's hair. And she just started sharing her testimony of her mom and how her mother transitioned. And it was exactly the way my mother transitioned. And and I had to finish her hair, and she was going on and on. I think she talked about it for about an hour and a half. And I was like, Lord, it's going to be a little too much. This is a lot. And I was like, but I didn't want her not to share her story. I want her to be free to share her story. But it was a lot. It was starting to hit me. And I'm like, Lord, but I said, Lord, how am I going to handle when we're starting to grieve and going through grief and they're sharing their testimonies?
Right.
And I felt like God allowed me to go through that moment so that I can see you can handle it. Even though it was a lot. And I mean, her saying, everything my mother went through, she shared. So it was like I was reliving my mother's death.
Right.
And I said, and I didn't want to tell her, can you stop? Because I wanted her to just get what she needed at the time. But I realized when I went through that, I said, I'm ready. I can handle it. Because I was kind of wondering, like, how am I going to be? Because I felt at that moment I was really going through a place of sadness and was going through kind of a little depression for myself. How am I gonna help someone else? God said, "You're gonna make it through. You're gonna be okay." And I think because I was so anticipating the moment, and I think that's when anxiety comes in. When you are like, okay, my mom's her year's coming up. It's coming up. So I think I was really going through the sadness, the depression, and all this, the uncertainty. All this what's gonna happen on that day when I saw her take her last breath. And I was in anxiety was right because I was the what ifs, what ifs. And I was going through the flight, and I was going through the height and the flight. I was like the flight and the fight. It was all happening at the same time. Cause like what? And I really found myself, and that's when she kind of was sharing her thing, and I was like, Lord, I feel like I'm about to crack, but I was able to endure. And He said, "Don't worry about it. You're gonna be okay." And I think when I got to that day, and that's when I started my 3-day water fast. Didn't even realize I was starting at that same time. When that day happened, I was like, wow, Mama, oh my God, I'm okay. Sometimes we think that's when anxiety, because we trigger and the what ifs and we're trying to, and anxiety comes in and the depression comes in because you don't really know what's going to happen.
Right. I find a lot of times I'm catching people anxieties because I'm listening to their thought patterns. And like you said, those what ifs comes in, and those what ifs can go multiple ways, and we start playing them out in our head. And before we know it, we're playing out a hypothetical situation. Yes. When the moment comes, we're ready. But we're just letting that anxiety build and build because that uncertainty that's under there, we don't know which way it's going to go. And sometimes that's that part of like just fear and trusting the process and kind of going through it. You'll find that, like you said, you'll be okay.
I was fine. I was like, I went through all of these things. Unnecessary stress and put myself through some unnecessary depression, not knowing what was going to happen. And that day came and I'm like, wow. And actually did the water fast and was starting my whole life pivot. And it was just for the good. And I was like, wow, this was really good. Right. It was a good lesson for me to even so that I could help someone else too when they get to that place where closer to their mother or their father or their loved one's death, that day that their parents or their loved one passed away. Right. So I think that, it was.
I think that's important. And as I echo that, like sometimes staying in those what ifs, that's what keeps us stuck because thinking that way could have negative effects on you. Symptomology could come in. Like I know when I'm stressed, I usually feel it in my neck or my lower back, because you're overthinking, you're stressed, and it's like you said, unnecessarily, and it starts to take a somatic form on that. Some people have, headaches and things like that. So
I love that you said that because I was going to share that. So it's funny. I had it in my hips. It was I was wearing that grief in my hips, and it was just sitting there. And I said, and then once I got past that, it left because it was like, wow, I didn't realize it was just so much, but it was in my hips.
Right.
So like you said, your lower back. So it was kind of like my lower back, but my hips area. I was like, this right here.
Right.
Ooh, and it was unnecessary. And I didn't even realize that I was experiencing it until after that date came. And I'm like, oh, I feel better, So yeah, that's good. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Yay. I love it. Yeah. So as faith, in this journey, I think you kind of shared, you kind of touched on a little bit of, but your faith, just, how can your faith, you kind of said it throughout this whole thing about just how using your faith and your belief in God, if you wanted to share with them today, just share with them about how you can allow your faith to help you overcome, like you said, the scriptures and going to church and meditation.
Right.
You said some things. Did you want to share anything else about how your faith can really?
Faith is a big resource that we don't realize that's a part of our mental coping because it gives us guidelines and rules and structures, and I'm coming from a biblical perspective of how we should live our lives. And it really, too, instores that hope in there, that what we talked about that's needed for mental health. I find that too when I kind of do assessments and I hear like people, and I often talk about like what are your resources, what's helping you cope. You find people don't have resources. So where I said I can talk to my friends or whatever, they don't have anyone to talk to because talking to them, they might not be getting the answers or the support they needed. They're the only support. Or also too, I find that like people don't have that spiritual or religious foundation that's grounding them. And that's important. A part, like I said, is that restoring restoring hope and trusting the process to where if they don't have that, sometimes again their foundation is not strong. Often seen in like depression where people once had that spiritual faith or they had a religion and a foundation, but then they pulled away from it because they start like, again, I find people when you're depressed, those negative thoughts come in. So you're angry with God, you're blaming God, and it's really getting back to a place of, again, like restoring that that faith and having hope in the process and trusting it. So it's a healing journey to where faith plays a big role in it. You know, it's not
really
just
good.
mental health.
Yes, that's really good. Wow, that's really good. Wow, I love that. That's great. Ooh, this was good. This was really good. I enjoyed you. I like to leave with an I am. So what I am would you like to leave with our guests today? With the leave was I am, what would you like to think of?
You know, I love that word worthy today because so much of, like I said, my process where especially like I think the hardest one was when having self-doubt, like with the pandemic. And like you said, your own testimony of it. My testimony was I came out and I had my own practice for myself. You know, I wasn't no longer working for anyone. So amongst that uncertainty, like it forced me to get out on my own and trust the process and, you know, start my own therapy business. So so I'm worthy.
Yes, you are worthy. You know, and I think that is so important because that worthiness, like, you know, others say it doesn't matter how they see you, how you see yourself is most important.
Right.
And knowing that you are worthy to do anything you put your mind to and your heart to, you can do anything. Nothing's impossible with God. You know, He does the impossible.
Yes.
And I think that he makes us, and we need to learn to declare that I am worthy.
Right. Right.
I am worthy of whatever comes before me. And I think that even though with the pandemic, my faith, I did not, I said, I can't quit. I don't care if we are not essential. I don't care. I still made sure that we took care of our business. My husband, it was hard, you know, it was hard. And God had so many people just pour in our lives, you know, during the pandemic. I mean, people were like, Robin, check your this, check that. And they were just sending just resources and people on my doorsteps, people would ring my doorbell and left flowers and envelopes with money. And it just, I have a really good support system. But I really believe it's because when you are good to people, people in return will be good to you.
Right.
It
starts with that kindness that you were speaking about, right?
If you're kind, if you show kindness, you show love, people in return, they will show up for you. And they really showed up for me. I think that some people are that's a whole nother topic, but but we'll talk about that another time. But just knowing your worthiness and knowing your self-worth and just walk it in that is everything. So we leave with you today. I am worthy. I am worthy. And to know that you're worthy no matter what thoughts is going through your mind. Build yourself up, letting yourself know that you're enough, you're worthy, and you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Amen. And if God can take care of the lilies of the field and the flowers, He can clothe them, He can clothe you too. So stay encouraged, and thank you so much for tuning in to Faith Over Facts. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Faith Over Facts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We have new episodes every Friday. If you would like to support the ministry by donating or purchasing Faith Over Facts merch, please do so by visiting my website, RobinReneeMinistries.com. See you next time. Bye-bye.